Hi, I'm Dawn Montefusco, life coach for writers and creatives, and this is the Ultimate Writers Series, how to break through resistance, ignite your muse, and honor your soul's calling. And today we have a very special guest with us, Morry Zelcovitch. He's the creator of the Morry method. Morry first noticed the effects that sounds and tones had on his own mental state well over 40 years ago. This led to a decades-long journey deep into the study of brainwave entrainment. Not satisfied with the minor results he experienced, Morry sought out the world's foremost brainwave entrainment expert and, after extensive study and training, became one of the few certified brainwave entrainment engineers in the world. From that impressive starting point and with ongoing study and research, Morry has developed proprietary technology and techniques, which he has named the Morry method. And I'm going to let him tell us more about that. Hi, Morry.
Hi, Dawn. Thank you so much for having me here.
Oh,
I'm really honored. Thank you.
Such a pleasure to have you. So let's just start. Tell us a little bit about any projects you have going on or anything that you want to mention.
Sure. Okay. Basically, the biggest things I've got going on right now is I've been associated with a book called The End of Alzheimer's by Dr. Dale Bredesen. He's developed a technique that can halt and even reverse Alzheimer's in many cases. He's got over 100 actual case studies showing results to that effect. So even if your medical doctor tells you no, don't believe them, because there are options out there. And he actually mentioned one of my recordings in his protocol and suggests it to many of the patients and many of the people on what he calls the RECODE program that helps them to stimulate the brain activity. And as we all know, Alzheimer's is based in the brain and brain issues. So that's pretty big. I'm in the middle, because of that, I'm in the middle of actually adding new information that I have since gleaned about the human brain and aging into an updated version. Not really updated, more advanced version, if you will, of the program that I have, including the two things that are going to be introduced in my new system. I have another 8 or 9 techniques and technologies that are in development now that also are brand new and have never been done. All of them based on the brain and optimizing your brain, optimizing your creativity, optimizing the way you use what you were given at birth. Yeah. Everybody's given everything they need. And it's just a matter of unlocking its potential. The thing is, when I find, you see, I came from a place of extreme depression for many decades. So when you come from a place like that, what really gives you power and hope is an understanding of why you feel that way, why you feel stuck, why you feel like you're not creative, why you feel these issues in the first place. When you don't understand why you feel stuck, then it's, they call, in this case, you might call it writer's block or a severe case of writer's block. If you don't understand why you feel this way, then you're going to have a much more difficult time getting out of it. And even if you do get out of it, you're more likely to jump back into it at any moment because, again, you don't understand how you got there in the first place. Because you don't understand, you don't know what to do to avoid it or to get out of it. And what I do is I reverse engineer from, I work to understand what caused the problem or the issue in the first place. Once you understand the issue, it takes away a lot of the mystery and a lot of the fear. So you're less likely to allow yourself to fall into those traps. But even if you do, you recognize what caused it and you can take action because you know how you got there. You can take action to get out.
I love the way that you just said that. That's so important. Tell us, you've been really authentic and vulnerable about your story, which I love that you're so, really you're just you have nothing to hide.
No.
Tell us a little bit about that, how the depression actually was sort of what brought you to where you are today, which was brought you to discovering this.
It taught me everything. Interestingly enough, I, like everybody else when they feel bad, if they feel like they need to do something to get better. Some people just give up and they just wallow. I couldn't wallow for some reason. There was something going on in me that was pushing me. The interesting thing about pitch darkness is that even the small speck of light stands out. That's like crazy.
True. Yeah.
And then if you start paying attention to that speck of light, it grows and it grows and it grows and it grows. And eventually, the more attention you give it, the bigger it gets. And then the darkness starts becoming a minority and eventually it goes away. So what I did was, I tried to kill myself a bunch of times.
Mm-hmm.
But let's face it, if you really want to die, it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
So the fact that I didn't do it actually depressed me because I can't
Oh,
even do this
interesting.
right.
Oh,
You know, I
man.
couldn't do anything right. If people smile at me, I was mad at them because it's like they shove it in my face that they can be happy and I can't feel that.
Mm-hmm.
So when I realized I couldn't die, I had to find a way to live.
Mm.
And that was the trick because I started looking at a whole bunch of different products and ideas and concepts. And I was reading all these self-help experts books. And again, you know, anything there, tapping, even
Yeah.
other forms of brainwave entrainment before I developed my, you know, my own style.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing really helped me. But along the way, I was picking up, I guess, little bits and pieces that I was able to put in. And that's how the Morry method name came about, actually, because it was really me, you know, pecking away at other people's work
Mm-hmm.
and rebuilding it into a
Mm.
kind of taking it, breaking it down to its quantum level, which would be
Yeah,
its
yeah.
basic level, and then building it again, like putting the puzzle pieces together, but in a different way.
Got
And
it.
and what that did for me was it allowed me to feel like I was doing something because I'm trying to do something for myself.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it allowed me to have hope.
Mm.
Because even though I failed a bunch of times, right? But then I woke up one day and said, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't have done that. I have a mild concussion now. So there you go. Okay. So basically what happened is I hit myself and I said, what's going on here? Why am I doing this to myself?
Mm.
You know, I'm thinking these people, you know, because experts write books on self-improvement, for instance. Some of you out there might be writing a book on self-improvement. Do me a favor and do everybody else a favor that you're writing for. And don't give them or try to give them a blueprint of what
Right.
to do. I think the big mistake in self-improvement writing, at least, is that you talk as if you know the answer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry to say, the only expert that you can be is for yourself.
Yeah, that's true.
You are your own guru. So even if you've done something that has been perfectly fine and it's worked for you beautifully, if I follow it, it's not going to work for me.
Mm-hmm.
It just can't possibly work for me because I'm a different person, different background, different
Mm-hmm.
intentions, different interpretations. You know, everything's different. It's not going to work. Your job as a writer, for me, or for anything really, I'm using self-improvement as an example, is to inspire people.
Right. True, true.
I don't think it's to entertain people. I don't think it's to teach people. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's to, through your prose, through your writing, through your words, to help people, kind of like your car battery is dead on the side of the road and someone comes by and they hook up the cables to your
Yeah,
battery.
yeah, yeah.
That's your job. Your job is to stop on the road for people and give them that boost they need to
Totally.
get their own brain working
Yeah.
so that they can figure out what they need to do. You know, even writing for entertainment, you write a love story or you're writing, you know, a mechanics manual, anything you write at all, regardless of what you think you're writing a self-improvement book.
Oh, for sure.
Okay?
Totally.
Because it's helping people to live better. It's
And you figured this out for you, but what I'm hearing is that you also realized that you wanted to find a way to, well, how will this work for other people too?
well, actually, I was totally selfish. I didn't give a crap about other people. When you're completely depressed, you don't think of other people really. You're just
Yeah.
jealous and envious of them, even if their lives stink and they don't, you know, and you don't
How did
realize.
you how did you get out of it? Tell us the story. Like
Okay.
yeah.
So, in a nutshell, here's the Reader's Digest abridged version.
Mm-hmm.
I'm researching like crazy. I'm studying like crazy. I'm reading books like crazy to try to find an answer.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's trying to tell me what to do. So I
Mm-hmm.
follow what they do and it's not helping me. That's how I realized that, you know, your job is to inspire, not to teach.
Yeah, yeah.
So this hit me as making sense. Through various experiences in my life, I started noticing different things about time dilation, like how fast time was flying depending on different circumstances,
Mm-hmm.
the way I was thinking, what I was thinking, what was happening at the time. And then something happened. A friend of mine's dog died. It's funny, I use this as an example, but I've never really said it this way before. A friend of mine's dog died, and I called him up to say hi, and he tells me his dog died, and he's totally in tears. And it died like 2 or 3 days before. I think it was hit by a car.
Oh wow.
Not a nice way to go.
No.
So he's in tears and it's really bad. Now, I love my friend and I played with the dog too. I
Mm-hmm.
felt really bad while I was talking with him and I even teared up a little bit.
Yeah.
But 5 minutes after we hung up the phone, I was on my way, done my time.
Totally.
He's still crying.
Yeah.
So what is it about the same event that two people have different ways of reacting? It struck me that we were deciding to feel differently. In other
Wow.
words, the dog wasn't mine. I didn't have that attachment that he had. He had a different attachment. His decision was to feel bad. So his brain created a situation where he felt bad. Mine was to feel bad, but only to feel bad while I'm talking to him and, thinking about it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
same event, totally different feelings, totally different effects over time as well. As I'm researching, as I'm studying, because I'm realizing after a while that the brain is the key to my problems.
Wow.
Because I noticed that every time I start thinking bad thoughts, I feel much worse.
Right.
But again, dynamics are the answer. So I needed to understand, why is it when I think a bad thought, I feel worse? Now, most people would be laughing listening to me saying this. Well, it's because you're thinking a bad thought. But that in itself doesn't answer the question, and
Right.
it doesn't give you
Exactly.
understanding. So I
Yes.
did more research and I did look into it a lot more. And I decided that the reason why I felt worse was because I decided to feel worse. So I decided to feel worse. So what was it about deciding to feel worse that made me feel worse? Or in a writer's case, what is it that makes you feel blocked once you've decided to feel blocked?
No,
Well, what,
and by the way, you're feeling worse is what my clients will say. I
yeah,
felt worse. I mean, it's the
right.
block is emotional before the writing even starts.
They actually decided to feel that way.
Yeah.
That's the trick. And
Wow.
that decision, here's the real understanding, that decision creates brainwave activity.
Interesting.
Just like any thought creates brainwave activity. Remember, I was saying, why was I feeling bad when I decided to feel bad? Well, I decided to feel bad. My brain said, oh, Morry wants to feel bad. So it starts pulsing at various rates in different parts of my brain,
Yeah.
which then releases different neurochemicals. Because in my research, I was learning that different neurons, which are your brain cells, release different chemicals depending on the location in the brain and the actual frequency or the amount of times the neurons pulse electrical impulses per second.
Wow.
So it struck me that my negative thoughts were creating negative chemistry because they were creating this brainwave activity that was creating the negative chemistry. It's the negative chemistry that lets you feel bad. It's the negative chemistry that lets you feel blocked. It's the negative
Wow.
chemistry that lets you feel turned on, turned off, excited, bored, interested, anything. Anything you feel because you've decided to feel. That's how, and the proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the dog scenario where the owner chooses to feel sad for weeks or months. The friend feels sad for a few seconds here and there. Same event, totally different reaction. The only differentiating factor is the decision on how to feel. It creates the brainwave activity, which then creates the chemistry that allows you to feel how you've decided to feel. So I started reading a lot of self-improvement books at that point. All the big names. I'm not going to get into names right now. Most people know them anyway. They probably read them a lot themselves.
Yes.
So I read all these big name stuff. And this is, again, when you're writing, don't write it as a manual, please. Write it as an inspiration. I think you'll be a lot more successful, not only in sales, but in helping people. Because I think that's why you're writing, right?
Agreed. Agreed.
So what happened was I realized if I could change my thoughts, that would change my chemistry, which in turn would change how I feel. If my theory is right.
Yeah.
That's the trick. If my theory is right. The beautiful thing is, though, this isn't that hard to prove. All I need to do is change my thoughts and see what happens. So I'm reading all these great self-help books and I'm reading all these articles and all this stuff. And I feel kind of good while I'm reading it. But as soon as I stop reading it, down, and I crash. Like I had 15 cups of coffee and suddenly I crashed.
Right.
And I couldn't understand what was going on. And then it hit me. The negative chemistry loop that I have going, kind of like the cycle of depression, if you will, that was going on was locking me in. The chemistry, if you will, assuming I'm right on my theory, the chemistry is more powerful than the thinking at this point. Right. So the thinking may have started the process rolling, but after a while, you kind of get into a rut and the thoughts become habitual. They create the chemistry, which then becomes habitual. Then the chemistry takes over, and instead of thoughts creating chemistry, chemistry creating thoughts, you just have chemistry creating thoughts all around.
Yeah, it's like drugs. I mean, literally,
Yeah,
your body creates
that's
a
right.
drug. It gets used to, like if you eat sugar at a certain time of the day all the time,
Right.
then you get
Exactly.
that craving, the body craves the thing,
That's
you know?
correct.
Wow.
So, but that's a great idea. But again, I wasn't proving anything. I was just theorizing because I couldn't change the way I was thinking. Because I
Yeah.
couldn't change the way I was thinking, like my theory, remember, is that if I can change the way I'm thinking, that'll change my chemistry, which will then change how I feel. And
Right.
then that should then give me a cycle that makes me feel better over
Yes.
time. But I couldn't prove it then. Finally, it hit me upon my research. What if I can actually change my brain activity?
Mhm.
Because there's steps. First, a thought, negative chemistry, negative thoughts, more negative chemistry,
Right.
negative thoughts, and that's your cycle.
Oh
I
my
can't
God.
change my thinking, but what if I can subtly change my chemistry? If my theory is right, I'll be able to change my thoughts without even thinking about it. They'll just change by themselves because we make a decision to feel a certain way. Our brain creates chemistry that makes us feel that way. Once
Yes.
we get into a loop, we just keep
Yes.
feeling the way the loop makes us feel. But if I'm right, changing the chemistry will actually change how you think.
Right.
Now, this is backed up by medical science because they give you supplemental hormones and supplemental
Oh yeah,
neurotransmitter
for
medicines
sure.
for people who are depressed. They're changing the chemistry to make you feel better.
They also
Now,
do that with environment. I remember
yeah,
like if they, people who I read it, were addicted to heroin in the Vietnam War.
yeah.
Those that actually came over and were in a totally different environment didn't even have withdrawal symptoms. There's a chemistry that changes because of your environment. So chemistry is everything.
Yes, chemistry is everything. You took the
Wow.
words right out of my mouth. And then that's where I came across brainwave entrainment. And that's where I thought that's the key. And that's when I tried everybody else's entrainment. And unfortunately, it didn't help me. So I just got even more depressed. However, something inside was saying, it's not right. It hasn't evolved to the point where it's understood all the dynamics. You see, a lot of people use entrainment and create entrainment now that don't actually know anything about the brain or
Oh,
neurotransmitters,
interesting. Yeah.
neurochemistry. And you really need to have that information. You need to know the dynamics of how the brain works, why the brain works. Now, I don't know everything about how the brain works. The brain is one of the undiscovered
Oh
countries,
yeah.
right?
Totally. Totally.
It's probably less known about the brain than anything else. But the
Totally.
parts I do understand, or I believe I understand, that have been proven in my experience, at least to this point. Keep in mind, my mind is always open, and my thoughts. Tomorrow, you interview me again, I may say something totally different. But for right now, it showed me that if I could change my neuronal activity, if I could change my brainwave activity, find a way to do that, then I should think differently. So that's what I did. I ended up finding brainwave entrainment. It didn't work, but I was sure it should. So I started researching it more. I went onto a Google Scholar and I went into university libraries and I looked up in medical books. And I have no medical training,
Okay.
but
So
I taught myself all this stuff and I'm
yeah.
reading. And I realized, okay, now I can start making some recordings. These are just audio
Mm.
recordings for the most part. So I created audio recordings and I started listening. And I had among my millions of issues, okay, thousands and thousands of voices in my head all the time.
Interesting.
Okay, all the time. So once in a
Wait,
while I
pause
hear,
there for a second, because I
yeah.
have voices in my head, and I have lots of clients who have voices in their heads, and we don't talk about that. No one talks about the voices in writing, though, which is interesting. It's fascinating. Many men and women over 40 and 50 who want to write,
Yeah.
they get, that's a quiet art. It's a quiet art that we call the critic, and then they'll say, well, there's two critics. And then they'll say, no, there's three, and then we realize it's, there's the societal critic, then there's the mother, there's the father, then there's just this angry thing. And then it's almost interesting because I would love you to just talk a little bit about that, because we do talk about that, about the voices in our heads that prevent us from writing.
Okay. In a nutshell, there's two kinds of voices or two sources for the voices. Okay. I think the first source would just be confusion and distraction.
Okay.
So that would be the voices in my head.
Mhm.
which were thousands of them. It was kind of
Mhm.
like intermission at a rock concert when everybody was
Wow.
talking. That's what I heard every waking moment,
Oh,
nonstop, all the time. Okay.
wow.
And when I listened to my first recording the first time for like 20 seconds or so afterwards, there was nothing. And I knew I was onto something then. It came back right away after, but I mean, only one time. And I've been dealing with this 40
Yeah.
years. So, that's pretty monumental.
That's huge.
Yeah. Now, then there's the other kind of voices like you're talking about, the ones you can actually hear and understand.
Mhm.
Because I was
Mhm.
hearing mine, but occasionally I'd hear a word.
Oh,
I didn't
interesting. Yeah.
actually hear like you suck, you're
Yeah.
not good at anything. Although I
Yeah.
heard those voices too, but they weren't really the terrible ones for me. It was the group that was.
Yeah. The group. That's crazy.
But
Yeah. We're
when
more
it comes to
individual.
that's it. But when
Yeah.
it comes to things like writing or anything else, when you have the individual voices that are telling you, those are just aspects of your personality
Mm.
that are afraid of something.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, I believe in everybody's mind there's a little boy or a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
When we're all about 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, and somewhere in that range, we make perhaps the most important, I guess the word would be discovery of
Mm-hmm.
our lives. The most monumental thing to ever happen to us is when we suddenly realize that mommy and daddy aren't gods and we
Oh,
are
yeah.
autonomous.
Yeah.
Okay. When we realize we're actually an individual organism that at one point is going to be able to be totally independent of these people,
Mm-hmm.
that is the most important discovery you're ever going to make in your life.
Mm.
Now, when you're 7, 8, 9, 6 years old, whatever, and you make that kind of discovery, you instantly promote yourself to God, king, or queen of the universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you know everything. So from that day forward, every bad decision, every voice in your head is actually that stupid little kid who
Mm.
thinks he or she knows everything.
Yeah.
Now, if you have children, you wouldn't let them rule your life.
Right.
And yet we let that voice in our head, that child who thinks
Excellent
they know
point.
better, rule our life.
Excellent.
Again, it's all about understanding the dynamic. When you understand the dynamic that this voice in your head isn't Satan, okay? It isn't like, yeah, a little devil on one side and a little angel on the other side. They're at odds and arguing. It's not anything evil. It's not anything bad. All it is the little kid who sees through your creativity that you're trying to take control and doesn't want to relinquish control.
Fascinating. Yeah.
So it will fight you. I have clients who use my recordings and they get great results in the first few weeks, and then they stop using the system because their little voices have said, oh, you don't need it anymore.
Right. Sneaky.
Yeah. They say, oh, good for you. Now because anything you do that makes people think that they're going to change is going to wake up this little kid inside of you
Agreed.
and make
Yeah.
them do anything they can to stop you
Yeah.
from regaining your control. They're just going to do it. We have been taught in our lives, and this is a really important lesson here, okay? We've been taught in our lives that when we experience resistance,
Mm-hmm.
back away.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Right?
wow.
That's our reflexive action. Resistance is a bad word. It was a word designed to disempower you.
Mm.
Okay? In reality, all resistance is a sign that you're moving.
Yeah.
Right? You don't
Yeah.
feel resistance when you stand still. Go next. Okay, it's summer. It's getting to be summer here, or maybe you have indoor pools. If it's cold where you are, go stand in a pool in the shallow end and just stand there. You're not going to feel any resistance. Now, I want you to start walking towards the stairs. You're going to
Yes.
feel resistance.
Yes.
You only feel resistance when you're moving.
Yes.
You want to feel resistance. Resistance isn't a bad thing. It's a sign you're changing.
Yes.
And that little voice inside your head, or even if you have a few of them, which I think is just the one voice trying different voices.
Agreed. I agree with you on that. Yeah, for
okay.
sure. Totally.
And redefine that. Instead of it being resistance, it's now a sign that you're moving in the right direction. So what I would say to someone who's a writer and telling me, oh, I'm in the middle of this most amazing book. It's going to be a book of the century, but I can't get any further.
Yeah.
I'm feeling this great resistance. I'm going to say, you're this far away from doing everything you want to do.
I love it.
You can bet your bottom dollar, okay? I don't know what the hell that means, bottom dollar. I mean, to have a bottom dollar and it's this big, that's like millions of dollars. I'm happy to have a bottom dollar. But you can bet your bottom dollar that if the kid is trying to hold you back, that's a sign that you should push forward.
Right.
So the kid will actually go out of its way to keep you from getting the power back. And it does this by either convincing you you don't need to do something, or what you're doing is bad for you.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm.
It'll do anything in its power to hold you back, because again, it thinks it knows everything. Once it makes that initial discovery that it's independent and it's its own self, it's really the
Yeah.
discovery of self.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
self
It's true.
gets discovered, then everything else is secondary, and
Mm.
it doesn't want to lose that.
Mm.
You know?
Mm. How did you tell us a little more about your system for creatives? Uh,
Okay,
Tell us, because we're getting about to that time, and
sure.
I really want everyone to understand how this, because I really believe that everyone should try whatever it takes to get themselves out of resistance and do
Well, this is easy.
whatever they love to do. So many people are not happy, and you have created a way to help them. So tell us about how you would help a creative get out of resistance. How does the Morry method maybe work?
Well, I'll tell you what, when it comes to writing especially, what a great example. You see, I can use this example from now on now, because I never even thought to use this, but it's a wonderful example. Okay, so let's go back to my original analogy about brainwave activity and chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're blocked, it's because you've interpreted a lull in your conscious awareness of your thought process, which is basically what's happened, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you think you're dry. You think that. The minute you start thinking that, it creates chemistry that makes you feel that and believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in reality, what's probably been happening is thoughts and concepts have been building and arranging in your mind, getting ready to express themselves, but now you've cut them off because you believe you're blocked.
Wow.
Okay, so you've created brainwave activity that's changed how you feel. You're in a rut, you're blocked.
Mm.
Well, by subtly altering, that's the word. By subtly, all these writers are going to correct my grammar.
Oh, no, not my writers. We're good.
So by subtly altering your brainwave activity, we are also going to be altering your neural activity, which will alter your brain, the resultant chemistry in your brain,
Yes.
which will change how you feel. It'll
Wow.
naturally get you out of the rut, because you won't be in that same state you were in, feeling like you were in a rut, feeling like you were blocked. Remember that when you feel blocked, it's because your brain is processing. You need,
Mm-hmm.
when you do something on your computer, when you're uploading a file or downloading a file, you don't like freak out if it's not done right away.
Right.
But as soon as you hit enter, you give it time to process.
Yes.
If you're a farmer and you plant seeds, you don't pour gasoline on your on your crops the next
Mm-hmm.
day because you don't see 13 feet corn there anymore.
Right.
Right?
Right.
The seeds haven't had a chance to sprout yet. You
Totally.
understand that dynamic. Well, it's the same thing with your brain. If you've started writing something and then you hit what you consider to be a block, that's a misinterpretation that creates a worse situation, because if you believe you're in a block, your neural chemistry will literally make you feel the block, because that's what it thinks you want.
Mm-hmm.
By
Totally.
changing your chemistry, we alter that substrata, that creation that you made, and that allows your brain to quote unquote unstick.
Mm.
So brainwave entrainment, I think, is wonderful for everybody and anybody. When you look at it in terms of a writer, like, wow, that's incredible.
It's huge. It's
Yeah,
huge.
it is huge.
Yeah, and I think this is fascinating. Okay, so you've got writers, we sit down, and if we're, especially the way that you're saying how like the chemistry gets so used to itself, that if you're so used to being stuck and you're used to thinking of yourself, which people do, I'm no longer a writer, it's too late.
Yeah,
And I don't know why I feel this way. And then they start thinking about things that they choose to think about that makes them feel crappy. And
right.
then the whole thing, and then the big question, why? Why is this happening? Why is it that when I'm walking my dog, I'm so excited about writing, but then when I sit down to write, I just feel depressed or I can't get there? What's going on with those two things? And partly what you're saying is we've trained ourselves to some degree that when we sit down to write, we're going to just think about the misery and not write.
Well, that's them telling you, stop being so stringent. Whatever they've told you, how they
Yeah,
taught you how to write, screw that.
that's
If
awesome.
you are a real writer, and you are, because
Yeah,
I think we all are to some degree,
totally agree.
then what you do is write anything and everything that comes to your mind, no matter how silly it may sound, no matter how stupid, how illogical.
Yeah.
And if you're talking about pink, orange, polka dot, lime bananas, and then suddenly the thought of a Volkswagen driving on its roof, comes to your
I
mind,
agree.
write that down.
Mm.
Like, nobody is ever blocked, really.
Yes.
Okay, writer's block is a disempowering term. There's no such thing as writer's block.
I agree.
Believe in writer's block.
I agree. You know what I joke? Seth Godin had a blog out and he called it talker's block. And he goes, you never hear about talker's block. So he was like, writer's block doesn't exist,
That's right. Yeah, believe me, if you know me, you'll know I've never had a problem with talker's block.
You and me both.
But I love this stuff. This stuff's amazing. And your brain is amazing. And your brain processes millions of things every second.
Yeah, I do.
It can handle writing like 180 words, 200 words a second too, if you can type that fast.
Agreed. Or talk it into.
Yeah.
You give. I love that your method and your personality and what you've been through and your vulnerability just gives so much hope. That's what I love. When you say the word, when you said how people want to know why. And and hope is a weird word. Some people say, well, hope is kind of negative because then you don't really expect it. But in actuality, I think that when you're stuck or when you're depressed or suicidal, or I never tried, but I have been there and I have a lot of empathy, much empathy for that state of mind. But when slowly that information can come in and you can kind of go, oh, maybe that's why.
Uh-huh.
That's where the ball can start rolling. And that's where I think your method and many methods can come in.
Mm-hmm.
Really,
that's
really
right. Well,
you have a free gift for us.
Yes. Yeah,
tell us about that. Tell us about your links and all the good stuff.
Sure. Okay, this is a free recording. It's around 15 minutes long. It's called Alpha Flight. And it was originally designed for a doctor friend of mine in the United States. I'm a Canadian, who deals with a lot of high-priced executives who travel a lot, and they needed something to help them with jet lag. So I created this recording called Alpha Flight, which is something they could listen to just before, during, and even after the flight to help reinvigorate them and get the juices flowing again.
Cool.
Different time zones can really screw around with people like that.
I know.
So Alpha Flight can help with all kinds of things. And there's a description when you go to check it out. It kind of gives a listing of what it can do. But I almost encourage you not to read that, because that might just close your mind to what it can do for you. Mm-hmm. The beautiful thing about properly engineered entrainment is that it will do so much more for you than you think if you just go in with an open mind.
I love that.
Everybody will actually get different results because everybody has different needs. And remember, it's not me doing anything to you or with you or for you. It's you doing something and stimulating your own brain. And that's what Alpha Flight is about. It will allow you, especially if you start feeling a little stuck, put it on, close your eyes.
Yes.
Lean back with head support in your chair.
I love
stereo headphones. Don't use earbuds, stereo headphones.
Gotcha.
See what it does for you. Okay. It might take a few listenings. You might notice something almost immediately. If anything happens that you need to talk about, I'm always available. I make myself available. Now, the main system is called the quantum mind method. And this involves two main recordings. One is called Eden Energy Wave Dynamics. It's the world's first dual frequency brainwave recording. So basically we have right and left frequencies that go to different frequencies.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. They say sky's the limit.
Yeah.
There is no limit. The minute you say the sky's the limit, you perceive yourself as getting to the sky, you stop trying.
Right. Yes.
Don't stop trying.
So awesome.
In my view, if you're writing a book, if you're writing an article, if you're writing poetry, if you're writing anything, a sonnet, a song, whatever you're writing, it doesn't matter. If you're writing it, it's because you're in touch with yourself.
I agree with you.
Touch with what you need. It's a necessary form of expression that you need to allow to flow. Become an observer. Stop trying to push yourself. Stop trying to direct yourself. And please don't let other people tell you how to do anything.
Yes. Well, on that note, we have to wrap up, but that is amazing. And by the way, my first love is poetry, and I can't say enough about that last thing you said, which is don't say sky's the limit, because then you've limited yourself.
Yeah.
And just let it flow. So thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for being on the show. And everybody go check out his stuff. All the links are on the page. And Morry, thank you so much for doing what you're doing in the world. The world needs you.
Well, thank you for having me. And you know what? The world needs us all. And the proof of that, we're all here.
Yeah.
Right? You're not here unless you're here for a reason. So understand that, be true to yourself, and let yourself flow. You're beautiful. All of you are beautiful. And thank you, everybody out there. I love your energy, and thanks for sharing it with me.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, have a great one. Thank you. Bye.